to the closing bell on Wall Street. This is the Dow of the day. Look at it, up until lunchtime, down thereafter. A points move of more than 160 with a small loss as we head to the final hour. Pull the Dow apart and you see, although it's mainly green, there are some large losses down at Disney and Apple and Caterpillar, which is dragging the Dow lower. Why are the markets off? Well, these are the drivers of the day. The market's sudden downturn because Donald Trump gives the go-ahead for new tariffs. Russia is hiking rates for the first time in years, and the reason to boost the ruble. As for the Fed, the members there see more rate rises ahead. Of course, evidence that the US economy is hitting its stride. On a Friday, live from the world's financial capital. It's a miserable sort of day, but we are in New York City on Friday, September the 14th. I'm Richard Quest. I mean business. Good evening. We'll put our business agenda to one side for the moment as we look at a serious weather event taking place. The Philippines braced for the worst super typhoon Mangkhut as it makes landfall. It's hitting Luzon at the northern end of the country. Now, we're going to get a report from the ground in just a moment. More than 4 million people in the Philippines alone are in the storm's direct path. Evacuations are underway as military personnel are making emergency preparations. You can see the pictures and the awfulness of it. The flooding, the landslides, the power outages are all expected. James Reynolds is a storm chaser, I should say, who's in the area. He sent us this video a few moments ago.
Well, conditions are really starting to go downhill here in Santa Ana, right in the northeastern tip of Luzon. The super typhoon Mangkhut, Hong Kong, it's looking like it's going to track just to the south of where we are. I'm not sure exactly by how far, but the wind is really picking up now, and we're expecting the rain to start just cranking it down, and it's going to get a whole lot worse than this as the night progresses.
And James will join me on the phone in just a moment. The seriousness of this could be seen when you look at the map. So, for example, Filipino farmers getting rice crops in early will be badly affected. Hong Kong's output is expected to drop by 2/3 while the storm is overhead. And crucially as well, shipping will be disrupted. Look at the traditional shipping routes that you see in this part of the world. If the button works, then I would show you, but it doesn't. If you look at the traditional shipping parts or the shipping ports of the world, there you go, you see them very, very detailed, with a lot of high-intensity traffic coming out of places like Hong Kong, Guangzhou, right the way down to Manila. It's trans-Pacific, oceanic trade taking place. Now, this is what it normally looks like, but now ships are being diverted, and as a result, as you can see, a lot less traffic on the water. And passenger ships as well are also being affected. For example, if you take, for example, this passenger ship, which is the World Dream, they're getting an extra night's stay, and they won't be able to get into Hong Kong on Sunday. The damage all depends on where the storm goes. And for that, Ivan Cabrera is at the World Weather Center. So I know we're watching Florence over in the Atlantic. This in the Pacific is just as dangerous in an area of the world much less developed and capable of withstanding it.
Richard, no question about it. And to your point with those shipping lanes, parts of the South China Sea are just going to be impassable basically the next 24 to 48 hours because we have the planet's strongest cyclone of the year making landfall across the Philippines right now. There has not been a stronger storm so far this year. This is it. It is a super typhoon. We call it Mangkhut, and it made landfall just half an hour ago across the northeastern tip of, look at that eye right there. 2:30 local time with winds of 270 kilometers per hour, gusting to 325. The storm continues to push off to the north and west. As it does so, it will bring its ferocious winds on shore. Look at the circulation here. I'm really concerned about the area in Santa Ana. Offshore winds here with a coastal range, I think will protect on the eastern side of the coast. But on the northern side, we have less protection there, and the winds are coming right on shore. By the way, the Babuyan Islands as well to the north, not as populated, but still there are folks there, and this is the wind coming in off the water. That is going to be bringing in, Richard, I think 3 to 6 meters of water from the ocean right onto the coastline as a result of these very strong winds. Areas further to the south, a little bit less so there, but still a very dangerous storm, not just because of the storm surge, but also, of course, the wind that is howling. You saw James there with a helmet on to protect from projectiles. He's going to need that for at least the next 12 to 24 hours. And then there is the change. Landfall 1, done. Landfall 2 coming up, and that's in 48 hours. If you're watching us from Hong Kong, this is a huge storm. It is not going to diminish in intensity all that much. It goes to 195 and then 215, Richard, by the time it gets just to the south of the harbor there.
Right, and as I look at my map here, and can see the various, again, the shipping routes that we were talking about, and looking at the ships that are currently there. These are vital trade routes, Ivan, but there's, I mean, short of moving out further into the Pacific, there's not much one can do at this point. I mean, these ships are now stuck in it for the foreseeable.
As you said, they're going to have to stay in port, ride it out, and then people that have, of course, boats and all sorts of property across marinas are going to have to put away their boats, or hopefully they're in floating docks. But I tell you what, they may not bear well as a result of these winds that we're talking about here in 48 hours. 200-kilometer-per-hour winds. That is a huge deal for Hong Kong, one of the strongest storms to certainly brush or at least directly strike them.
Comparisons, you know, I know the old saying, compare and despair, but compare super typhoons, compare Mangkhut to Florence in the Atlantic. Different types, different strengths. One's a Category 1 hurricane. This is a super typhoon. One's got huge amounts of water, but this one also seems to have huge amounts of water with it as well.
And look at what this one's doing. It's moving west-northwest at 30 kilometers per hour. That means that in basically 12 to 24 hours, it's out of the Philippines. The storm in the United States, Florence, is at a crawl, basically wobbling and stalling, pumping all sorts of rainfall here. And the topography makes a huge difference as well as the population. There are millions of people in the path of Florence, not as many here across the northern tip of Luzon. Obviously, they're going to be a lot more impacted in Hong Kong. Hopefully, by then, the winds will diminish even more so than we're showing. But 215 is a good bet right now in 2 days.
Keep an eye on it, please. Keep a close eye on what's happening over there. We are still trying to get in touch with the storm chaser, James Reynolds, on the line. He spoke to Halagarani about 40 minutes ago.
All I can tell you, it is raging out there. It is going absolutely wild, and it's quite fortunate that we're actually able to talk right now.
Right. I'm very thankful that we are. We actually had issues, just full disclosure with our viewers, getting in touch with you on the phone, and that would make sense because this is such a violent storm. Tell us what you're seeing exactly from your vantage point.
Well, it's the middle of the night here. The hotel room, which we were originally checked into, and we're going to ride out the storm in, has become uninhabitable. The windows just blew in and smashed in. Basically, all the doors and windows of the building we're in, which are exposed to the wind, have smashed in. So we're in an interior room now, just hiding. I usually try and film these typhoons, but I can't really do that now because safety is the priority, obviously. So we're just waiting for the daybreak, the wind to die down, and get a better idea of what exactly has happened out there.
Right, and we are actually showing our viewers video that you shot there in Santa Ana. So you're saying that essentially the windows exposed to the winds have blown out, have shattered. And you're basically, it. People need to hunker down in parts of the structures they live in, away from any of these windows.
That's exactly it. And actually, you know, the interior corridors of the hotel we are in right now are hazardous because the typhoon is entering the building. There's sheets of plywood flying through the corridors of the building, glass, shards of glass everywhere. And it's just a case of finding an interior room, surrounding yourself by concrete and waiting for the winds to die down.
So I heard there were two, and we've been talking about the two major storms as Typhoon Mangkhut parallels along the Pacific. Florence is already causing chaos in the eastern United States. We've received word of the first fatalities. The Wilmington police have now said 2 people, a mother and an infant, were killed when a tree fell on their home. The father was also injured. Huge swathes of the Carolina coast now lie underwater. Powerful winds and torrential rain have flooded homes and destroyed crucial infrastructure. 600,000 people are without power. Many have already fled their homes. Others stayed behind to protect their homes and businesses. Rescue teams have been working now non-stop to help those unlucky enough to get caught up in the devastation. CNN's Dan Gallagher spoke to one of the rescue workers.
We rescued a couple people that were posting on Facebook, their addresses and stuff. We, elderly people, blind people, medically problem people, we just, everybody that needed help, we were there.
I saw, and earlier here in Riverbend, we actually ran into them. They were going down to get somebody who needed to come back out on a backboard, basically.
Correct. Yes, when the water came in last night, it knocked her down, and we aren't sure if it dislocated her hip or broke her hip, but we took every medical precaution necessarily to make sure we got her out safely into the treatment she needed.
And so now to CNN's Miguel Marquez, who joins me. He's in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. Miguel?
This is a storm that just will not relent. Over 24 hours, we've been dealing with the effects of Hurricane Florence, and it's not stopping anytime soon. We were just in an area that was flooded in town. The tide is receding, so it is the flooding is getting somewhat less, but we have another tide coming in about 8 hours here, and then we'll see what happens. I want to show you this here. This is the boardwalk at Carolina Beach, and the wind is just blowing so hard now from the south. It was blowing from the ocean, and then it was blowing from the west this morning, and now it's blowing from the south, due south. This was sand. There was sand right up to this area this morning. Now, about 2 feet of the beach here has been literally just wiped away. There's beach erosion all the way down here. The waves are just massive. What they are dealing with now is a sort of a waiting period. They have got to just sort of hunker down and wait and try to see if they can survive this storm. The people who have stayed here, this is a town of about 6,200 people. About 600 people have made the decision to stay here. Emergency services at this point say, if you're in trouble, call if it is absolutely an emergency. But if it's a tree down or a wire down or something that they can deal with later, don't call, because 911 operators are inundated. And also the electricity across here in Carolina Beach and across the county. About 108,000 people in New Hanover County no longer have electricity. Duke Energy, the main energy supplier here, has only 128,000 customers in this county. So almost the entire county right now without electricity. When will it stop? This storm has just been crawling. We have hours to go at this point. There's another tide coming in around midnight local. We will see how things go, but that storm surge on top of the rain, along with the wind just pushing it along, it's not a great mix. Hala?
Miguel Marquez, who's there. Florence's path of destruction is predicted to pass right through Carolina's ports. These are critical gateways to the eastern United States. The port of Charleston alone handles around $70 billion worth of goods value each year. The ratings agency Moody's predicting major disruption. Jim Newsom's with me, the president and chief executive of South Carolina Ports Authority. Sir, commiserations to you, but at the same time, congratulations on the way in which, the calm way in which it is being handled, and recovery efforts are being made even before the storm has gone. How difficult will it be to get everything back up and running?
Well, Richard, we are not going to be as much affected as we originally anticipated. The storm seems like it will go further north of us, and mainly we should experience a lot of rain. We secured the port on Wednesday night. The last ship left early Thursday morning, and we are actually preparing, to reopen, we hope, either Saturday night or Sunday with vessel traffic, because as you say, the ships have to get in and out eventually at the earliest possible time, so that the cargo can move. So up to right now, we think we were pretty fortunate, but we have to monitor the situation.
These are enormously difficult natural events to cope with, because the sheer amount of preparation, it's always about preparing for the worst, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, if you look at this storm, early in the week, it was much more powerful wind-wise. Fortunately, that diminished. It has pretty much stayed on its direct path as far as landfall, but there was some thought earlier in the week that it would take a trip down the coast and leave hurricane force winds maybe as far south as Charleston and Savannah. So that obviously got our attention very quickly. And you know, most ports in Wilmington will be very much the same. They're very professional there. There's a protocol for how you secure a port for a hurricane relative to wind, and you know, that's the main thing that you can secure against. Our docks, our wharfs are about 5 meters above the water level at low tide, and typically that would buffer most storm surge. But you know, if you get 40 inches of rain like they're talking about north of us, that's 3 years worth of rain normally. So it's hard to tell what the impact of that would be. There's so much you can do. Our terminals have a lot of wireless infrastructure to communicate with us, so that would obviously be affected in a wind event. And our container cranes are also electric, so if the electricity is out, that's a problem. And access to the terminals can be a problem with trees and things of that nature.
How important are your ports to the economy of the United States?
They're very important. I mean, particularly if you look at the Southeast, I mean, we're a region that's experiencing a lot of population growth, and that drives imports and a significant amount of manufacturing growth in terms of automotive industry and plastics and aviation and things like that. So our states are very dependent on importing and exporting, and realize that while we may have a port in Charleston, a lot of that cargo goes to places that's not near the coast, Alabama, Tennessee, places like that. So a lot of just-in-time operations depend on getting cargo in and out of the port. And most people are very sophisticated in how they approach these things. And we'll do our best to get the ports back in operation as soon as it's safe, mainly for our staff, for the people who work on the port, but also for the ships and the cargo.
Sir, thank you. We wish you well in your endeavours. We're pretty sure you're going to. Thank you for taking the time and joining us on What's Busy Times for you.
Okay,
It's Grassroots Business from New York. As we return in a moment, more tariffs against Beijing. The US president's reportedly given the signal. And as China asks Wall Street for help to fix its relationship, I'll discuss it all with the president of the US-China Business Council in a moment.